In the beginning, the birth of India. In this presentation, we will try to explore the origin of Earth that preludes the geological evolution of this planet and the birth of India. Our discussion will continue with the evolution of life, and in the final stage, we will conclude this chapter with the origin of modern man. Our discussions will take into consideration our spiritual beliefs as documented in our scriptures. Origin of Earth. The universe is where we are, a small speck amidst giant stars and planets that form, exist, and are destroyed according to strict physical laws of nature. Within that limitless framework are we, with our limited activities. The ancient epic Rig Veda dates from 1000 BC, emphasizes the mystical origin of this universe and the life it nurtures. This is also described in the hymn of Hiranyagarbha found in Yajurveda. Om Hiranyagarbha Samavartatagri Bhutasya Jata Patirekayasita Sadachara Prithvi Dyamute Mang Kashmai Devaya Havisha Vidhema. Om. The earth came out of the sun 6.45 billion years ago, and the natural law of gravity made it go around the sun like other planets. The moon later came out of the molten earth and became its satellite, circling around it due to interspatial gravitational attraction. It took many years for the earth to cool down when chemical evolution started. The atmosphere was full of poisonous gases, and finally water formed from two gases, hydrogen and oxygen. This was truly a miracle that defied the common laws of chemistry. Then it rained for millions of years that submerged the land mass, forming a huge ocean enveloping the earth. Continental drift and origin of India. The molten earth lying under the water about 550 million years ago finally came up from the ocean as a single mass of solid capped with ice. This was then the single continent on the face of the earth, dubbed by Alfred Wegener as Pangaea, which meant all lands. This was about 250 million years ago. By 135 million years ago, the break of Pangaea was well underway and gave rise to Gondwana, which was located towards Antarctica. The magnetic attraction of the North Pole forced the land masses to split and migrate towards the north. The land mass of India separated out from the Antarctica as a result of Gondwana's breakup nearly 100 million years ago, moved rapidly towards Asia, crossing the equator on its way, and finally it collided with the land mass of Asia that gave rise to Himalaya and today's India. This was perhaps 85 million years ago. Following the initial geological and chemical evolutions, the earth became congenial for life and triggered biological evolution leading to the origin of humans. Evolution of life on the earth. According to our current knowledge, life only exists on earth and in no other planet. It first started from the sea as unicellular organisms which bifurcated into plant and animal lives in later years. Earth has the right atmosphere to support life. The increased vegetation on Earth helps to evolve various forms of life. Fish was one of the primitive vertebrates that had backbones like the humans, which led to the first incarnation of Vishnu as Matsyavatar. The land mass triggered to the evolution of amphibians, which could choose to live in water or on land. Thus comes the second incarnation of Vishnu, or Kurmavatar, in the form of turtle. On the time scale, this was conjectured to be 200 million years ago. Mammals began to evolve during the next 100 million years, leading to the era of dinosaurs. Varahavatar is a third incarnation of Vishnu as a pig, which is a mammal. Human-like creatures appeared on the earth by about 10 million years ago, mentioned in our scriptures as Narsinghavadar, the fourth incarnation of Vishnu. The primitive short man, or Vamanavatar, which is the fifth incarnation of Vishnu, was dated to be 3 million years ago. Their remains in Sivalik mountains gave them the new scientific name of Ramapithecus. The modern man, described as the later incarnation of Vishnu, Parashuram, Ram, and Krishna, were in existence on this earth since the past 1 million years. The origin of man in Central Africa and its migration to other parts of the world will be our next topics to elaborate.
The origin of humans and their global migration. Life on Earth first began in water. The first fish reportedly appeared about 500 million years ago. Interestingly, Hindu religious scriptures written many years ago mention the existence of Matsya, or fish, as Vishnu's first incarnation. Vishnu is the preserver of life. Evolution of man. Most scientists believe that the human species originated in the Olduvai Gorge in the eastern part of Africa in northern Kenya. Bones and tools of hominids of the genus Australopithecus have been found in Tanzania, Kenya, Ethiopia, and other places going back at least 5 million years. These hominids walked on 2 legs and may have learned how to control fire. With the aid of their tools and intelligence, the Australopithecus established themselves securely throughout most of eastern and southern Africa. Beginning about 1 million years ago, the Australopithecus gradually disappeared as new species of hominids, possessing greater intelligence, evolved and displaced their predecessors. The most important of these new hominids was the Homo erectus. However, about 250,000 years ago, the Homo erectus faded before the advance of even more intelligent and successful human species, including the Homo sapiens. Intelligence allowed the Homo sapiens to adapt to widely varying environmental conditions and to establish the species securely throughout the world. Global migration. Despite the enormous uncertainty in our knowledge of human development, fossil records allow us to draw a reasonably clear picture of 2 important early periods, the Paleolithic, or Old Stone Age, and the Neolithic, or the New Stone Age. The immensely long Paleolithic Age, which lasted from about 400,000 to 7,000 BC, takes the scholarly name from the crude stone tools that the earliest hominids chipped from flint and obsidian, a black volcanic rock. The Paleolithic Age. Paleolithic peoples hunted a huge variety of animals, ranging from elephants in Spain to deer in China. The hunters were thoroughly familiar with the habits and migratory patterns of the animals on which they relied. But success in the hunt also depended on the quality and effectiveness of the hunter's social organization. Paleolithic hunters were organized and hunted in groups. They also nourished themselves by gathering nuts, berries, and seeds. The basic social unit of Paleolithic societies was probably the family, and their family bonds were no doubt stronger and more extensive than in most human cultures today. The Neolithic Age. Paleolithic tribes either moved with the herds and adapted themselves to new circumstances, or they perished. After the last ice age, around 7,000 BC, some hunters and gatherers began to rely chiefly on agriculture for sustenance. Thus began the Neolithic Age. Neolithic man also acquired reliable fire-making techniques in the form of friction-producing implements, or flint, struck against pyrites. the transition to settled life had a profound impact on the family. Bonds to extended family ties weakened as the Neolithic peoples were more dependent on immediate neighbors than on kinfolk. Until recently, scholars thought that agriculture originated in the ancient Near East and gradually spread elsewhere. Contemporary work, however, points to a more complex pattern of development. Under the same environmental conditions in various parts of the world, domesticating plants and animals probably began at the same time, around 7000 BC. The advent of agriculture brought many other changes. Settled life brought a dramatic increase in population, and towns and cities began to take shape. People began to store the surplus grains for bad days, and commerce began to develop. The stable agriculture led to the division of labor and development of more sophisticated tools, means of irrigation, and other ways to raise production. In short, the development of systematic agriculture was a fundamental turning point in the history of civilization. Thus came the four great river valley civilizations: Egypt, Mesopotamia, Indus Valley, and North China. Much of the early civilization is accredited to Sumer and Egypt around 3000 BC. Sumer and Egypt are also thought to be the beginning of the Indus Valley civilization. The original settlers of India. Migration to India took place in many waves. The earliest evidence of human activities in India goes back to the Paleolithic Age, or the Stone Age, roughly between 400,000 and 200,000 BC. These are the early humans that led to the evolution of modern man, or Homo sapiens sapiens. The reporting of Peking man from China confirms their possible existence in India as well during that period. The Aboriginals of India. Baigas of central India, Gondas, Todas of the Nilgiri Hills, Nagas, and Mizos of the northeast frontier province are the Aboriginals of India, who are considered by many archaeologists as the original residents of India. They came to India much before the Indus Valley civilization. They are the living examples of the Neolithic culture. In isolated parts of India, these people still lead the lives of primitive hunters, gatherers, and pastoral people. They constitute 30 million people out of India's population of 1 billion. Of these, a Nerito strain, now very thinly represented, is held to be the oldest. This was succeeded and partly absorbed by the so-called Proto-Australoids, who are genetically related to tribes of Central and South India, to the Vedas of Sri Lanka, and to the Australian Aborigines. The third strain, the Mongoloid, is almost entirely confined to the northeastern fringes, and a fourth, a Mediterranean type, added to the mosaic picture of the Aboriginals of India. Indus Valley civilization of ancient India. Before the dawn of history, there were bands of people that roamed across the earth. As time progressed, they gradually developed numerous, diverse cultures. Especially important to world history are the events that took place in ancient India, China, Mesopotamia, and Egypt. Here, human beings abandoned their traditional nomadic lifestyle and instead started settling down in stable agricultural communities. From these communities grew cities and civilizations, societies that invented concepts and techniques now integral to contemporary life. One such fundamental concept was writing, independently developed by the Sumerians in Mesopotamia, by the Indus Valley, and by China. This invention enabled knowledge to be preserved and spread. Literature, science, mathematics, astronomy, and architecture were all innovations of ancient civilizations. So too were the first codes of law and religion. These basic concepts still permeate in daily life all around the world. Indus Valley Civilization. The earliest Indian civilizations centered near a great river, the Indus. Current archaeologists believe that a gradual evolution of societies from the Neolithic period might have occurred in the fertile plains of the Indus River. These societies were made up of scattered settlements that consisted of people who made buildings of mud brick. By at least 5000 BC, these people had begun to raise crops of barley and wheat, and had domesticated various animals such as cattle, sheep, and goats, thereby laying the foundations of village and later urban life. They created a thriving and sophisticated urban culture. Like the Mesopotamian city, the city in the Indus Valley was surrounded by extensive farmland which fed its inhabitants. These pioneers also developed a script which still has not been deciphered. There was trade between the cities in the Indus Valley and Mesopotamia, both in goods and in ideas, probably by the way of the Persian Gulf. The Indus Valley civilization was larger than any other ancient empire, including those of Egypt and Mesopotamia. Its two great centers were located in the cities of Mohenjo-daro and Harappa. The remnants of these two major cities, Mohenjo-daro and Harappa, reveal remarkable engineering feats of uniform urban planning and carefully executed layout of water supply and drainage. This is now generally known as the Harappan culture. City planning. A city was divided into two parts: the lower town, where most people lived, and a fortified citadel built on a raised brick platform. The streets of the lower town were laid out in a grid pattern, with wide main roads intersected by narrower side streets. Houses were built of mud bricks, and many had courtyards. Each house had a bathroom and an efficient drainage system. A massive brick wall protected the citadel. This citadel is thought to have been the city's religious and administrative center. In Mohenjo-daro, the citadel also housed the Great Bath, used for religious rituals. Each city also had huge granaries for storing precious supplies of grain. Indus life. Extensive agriculture production, commerce, and trade with Mesopotamia supported Harappan life. The main crops were wheat, barley, dates, and melons. The Indus people loved jewelry and crafted tiny terracotta animals to wear as necklaces. Today, many terracotta figures have been found at the Indus sites. Some resemble ancient gods and goddesses. The people also made various tools and weapons from copper and bronze. Cotton was woven and dyed for clothing. Wheat, rice, and a variety of vegetables and fruits were cultivated, and a number of animals, including the humped bull, were domesticated. Harappan culture was conservative and stable. It is, however, not clear who wielded authority. Was it an aristocrat, a priest, or a person of commercial standing? There is currently plenty of debate as to whether the Harappan scripts, numbers, and alphabet are Proto-Dravidian or Proto-Sanskrit. In the linguistic map, there now appears in the arid highlands of Baluchistan, which is in modern-day Pakistan, an isolated pocket representing a language, Brahui, of Dravidian origin. Despite tantalizing glimpses of a serene and stable society, the intellectual and religious life of the Indus Valley people is largely unknown. Fertility was a major concern to them, as it is to most agricultural people. They apparently worshipped a mother goddess who looked after the welfare of the community. Some later Indian religious beliefs may have originated in this period. One of the most engaging of the early Indian deities, who is depicted at Mohenjo-daro with his customary 3 faces, surrounded by wild animals, closely resembles Shiva, a major Hindu god. The Indus people's great fondness for animals is apparent in the popularity of terracotta animal figurines. This prefigures the deep respect for the animal world that Indians have traditionally felt. Indeed, the Indus people give the impression of having been a people in tune with the world around them, a world they understood and enjoyed. People maintained their equilibrium with nature for hundreds of years, spreading their culture throughout the valley and enjoying a tranquil, steady development. The Indus in decline. The Indus civilization was at its peak by about 2500 BC. After years of prosperity, Mohenjo-daro and Harappa suffered a long decline, perhaps as a result of deforestation, a change in climate, and their huge demands on the land. The first excavators of Mohenjo-daro found some skeletons of men, women, and children scattered across the ground, many with axe or sword wounds. Contemporary archaeologists, however, point out that there exist too few skeletons at Mohenjo-daro to indicate mass slaughter as the reason for that city's disappearance. Others suggest that the cities may have been destroyed by frequent terrible floods, or by the river changing course and causing the farmlands to dry up. It may also be possible that the population may have fallen prey to diseases such as malaria. What is not disputed is that many of the Indus people lived on with their lives, though disrupted and scattered. With them, they carried the accomplishments and values of their culture, which became an important element in the development of the later Indian civilization. In fact, the rich religious life of the people proved more important than politics because it was a shared and enduring cultural heritage of the land. Kings came and went, but the gods remained. Thus, religion was the glue that held their society together. The common notion that the Harappan civilization was wiped out by the later invasion of the Aryans is incorrect. History indicates that the Aryans may not have reached India until many years after the fall of the Indus civilization.